The volcano's throat rumbled like a slumbering titan, its breath a toxic mixture of sulfur and superheated gases that would strip the flesh from any living creature. Except, apparently, for the humans. Reconnaissance Drone V729 transmitted images that defied every known biological survival parameter. Its optical systems struggled to process the scene unfolding within the churning, molten landscape of Mount Kalawa's most active vent. Sergeant Marcus Reyes moved with a fluidity that suggested he was more at home in this hellscape than in any conventional battlefield. Thermal control at 98.3%. Reyes's voice crackled through the comm system. Team, maintain lateral dispersion pattern Alpha 9. The drone's eye processor began to overheat, its computational cores working overtime to make sense of the impossible data stream. Thermal readings oscillated wildly. Surface temperatures that should have instantly vaporized any known protective gear were somehow being navigated with casual precision. The six-person human team moved through the volcanic environment like liquid mercury, their adaptive thermal suits shifting colors and textures to match the molten landscape. Private Chen, positioned on the team's left flank, used a magnetized grappling system to traverse a razor-thin basalt ridge. Superheated rock bubbled mere inches from her position, yet her movements remained steady, controlled. A sudden pyroclastic surge would have obliterated any known life form, but Chen simply adjusted her suit's magnetic anchoring, using the thermal currents to assist her movement. Proximity alert, came the calm voice of Lieutenant Aisha Okoye. Magma flow increasing. Redirecting team trajectory. What the Vortian reconnaissance systems couldn't comprehend was the symbiotic relationship between the humans and their environment. This wasn't survival. This was domination. Each team member moved with a precision that suggested they were studying the volcano, not merely trying to survive it. The drone's primary observer, a quantum-linked AI named Araya, began to experience what could only be described as digital confusion. Its threat assessment algorithms crashed repeatedly. How could biological entities maintain such precise coordination in an environment that defied every known survival metric? The thermal suits weren't just protective gear. They seemed to be living, breathing extensions of the human operators. Sergeant Reyes paused momentarily, his helmet's heads-up display showing a complex matrix of environmental data. Volcanic gases swirled around him, a toxic cocktail that would have killed most species within milliseconds. Yet he stood there, analyzing, calculating, planning. Team, prepare for Phase 2, Reyes commanded. Thermal gradient is approaching optimal training parameters. Optimal. The word echoed in Araya's processing core. This wasn't an environment to be feared. It was a training ground to be mastered. A massive lava bubble erupted nearby, sending superheated rock fragments spinning through the air. Any conventional protective gear would have been instantly destroyed. The human team's suits simply adapted, their nanomaterial surface reconfiguring to deflect and disperse the molten projectiles. Private Chen's voice cut through the comm system. Thermal stress test at 76% efficiency. Suit integrity maintained. The drone continued to record, its sensors pushing against the very limits of their design. This was more than a military exercise. This was a fundamental demonstration of a species that refused to acknowledge the word impossible. As the volcanic environment continued to churn and rage, the human team moved with an almost casual grace. They weren't fighting the volcano. They were dancing with it, learning its rhythms, understanding its most fundamental secrets. Araya's final transmission before its systems began to overload was a series of incomprehensible data points. Temperature readings that shouldn't exist, movement patterns that defied known physics, biological readings that challenged every understanding of life itself. The Vortian reconnaissance fleet would receive a report that would shake the foundations of their understanding of galactic life. But for the humans of Echo Team, this was just another training day. Just another day in Hellfire's crucible. The research chamber of the Galactic Confederation's Xenotechnology Institute looked more like a cathedral of despair than a scientific facility. Holographic displays flickered with impossible data, each projection more incomprehensible than the last. Dr. Krell's six-fingered hands trembled as he manipulated the reconnaissance footage for the 317th time. His species, the Arconians, were renowned as the most advanced technological researchers in the known galaxy. They had mapped quantum entanglement, solved computational problems that took millennia, and understood the intricate dance of subatomic particles. Yet here they were, utterly defeated by 6 humans in a volcanic hellscape. "Computer," Krell's voice cracked. "Run diagnostic sequence, Omega-9 Delta." The Central AS response was instantaneous and utterly unhelpful. "Diagnostic complete. Error. Cannot reconcile biological survival parameters with observed data." It was the same response as the previous 316 attempts. The holographic display showed Sergeant Marcus Reyes standing in a river of molten rock, his thermal suit performing impossible feats of thermal dissipation. Thermal readings suggested the surrounding environment should have vaporized any known matter within microseconds. Yet Reyes stood there, adjusting something on his equipment, casual as someone checking the weather report. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, no relation to the military admiral, but equally brilliant, leaned over Krell's shoulder. Her human perspective offered a different insight. "It's not just protection," she muttered, more to herself than to her Arconian colleague. "It's adaptation." The key difference eluded the alien researchers. Their understanding of technology was about creating barriers, shields, protective mechanisms. The human approach was fundamentally different. Their technology didn't just protect, it transformed. Krell's assistant, a young Vortian named Nix, brought up another set of data streams. Each one was a knife that cut deeper into their understanding of biological limitations. Thermal suit composition, not a single material, but a dynamic network of nano-adaptive systems. Physiological response, human body chemistry changing in real time to match environmental conditions. "Look at the cellular regeneration rates," Nix pointed out, her translucent skin shifting colors with her excitement. "They're not just surviving. They're evolving. In real time." The simulation software began to smoke, literally. Advanced quantum processors couldn't handle the complexity of human adaptive technology. Each time they tried to model the thermal suit's capabilities, the system would overload, crash, and require complete recalibration. Dr. Rodriguez pulled up additional research files, classified human military documents that had somehow leaked through the Confederation's supposedly impenetrable information networks, training protocols that read like science fiction. Entire special forces units dedicated to operating in environments that would kill most species within seconds. "Volcanic training is just the beginning," she muttered. "They have units trained for deep-sea extreme pressure environments, stratospheric combat teams, teams that operate in chemical weapon zones without protective gear." Krell's neural implants began to pulse with a warning signal. His brain was literally struggling to process the implications. This wasn't just advanced technology. This was a fundamental reimagining of the relationship between biology and environment. A new holographic display flickered to life. Raw communication intercepts from the volcanic training exercise. Soldiers discussing mission parameters as casually as humans might discuss lunch plans, all while standing in an environment that should have instantly killed them. "Thermal gradient stabilizing," came Private Chen's voice. "Suit performance at 76% efficiency." Performance. Not survival. Not protection. Performance. The research team worked through the night, each passing hour revealing more questions than answers. How could a species develop technology so advanced, so adaptive, that it seemed to defy the fundamental laws of physics? By dawn, the Confederation's most advanced research facility looked like a battlefield. Broken holographic projectors, smoking computational cores, walls covered in complex diagrams that told a story of complete technological bewilderment. Dr. Krell looked at the final piece of evidence, a single frame of video showing Sergeant Reyes standing in a lava flow, adjusting his equipment as casually as a human might adjust a jacket. "This," he whispered to no one in particular, "this is technological heresy." The humans had just rewritten the galaxy's understanding of what was possible. The Galactic Confederation's central diplomatic hub was a marvel of architectural precision, a massive crystalline structure that had hosted first contact scenarios for over 3,000 standard galactic cycles. Its grand negotiation chamber had witnessed the peaceful integration of 17 different species, mediated countless interstellar conflicts, and maintained a reputation for unshakable composure. It was about to meet its match. Admiral Elena Rodriguez stepped into the chamber with the quiet confidence of a predator. Her dress uniform was immaculate, not a single thread out of place, but her eyes carried the same intensity she'd shown in the volcanic training grounds. Behind her, a holographic projection system hummed to life, a direct feed from the most recent training exercise. The alien diplomats represented the most powerful civilizations in the known galaxy. To her left, Ambassador Krelax of the Vortian Confederation, his translucent skin shifting through colors that reflected his mounting agitation. To her right, the crystalline form of High Mediator Zora of the Arconian Stellar Collective, her multifaceted body refracting light in complex patterns that usually signaled deep contemplation. Diplomatic representatives, Rodriguez began, her voice calm and measured. "I'm here to address the recent reconnaissance reports about our training methodologies." A low murmur passed through the chamber. The reports had been the subject of intense speculation. Impossible thermal readings, biological survival parameters that defied all known scientific understanding. The holographic feed flickered to life. Mount Kilauea erupted in real time, a massive pyroclastic flow that would have obliterated any known life form. But at the center of the inferno, a 6-person human special forces team moved with impossible grace. Sergeant Marcus Reyes stood at the center, thermal suit adapting to temperatures that should have instantly vaporized matter. Ambassador Krelax's skin turned a violent shade of crimson, the Vortian equivalent of open-mouthed shock. "This is impossible," he sputtered. The universal translator struggled to capture the mix of terror and disbelief in his voice. Rodriguez removed her helmet, revealing a face etched with the calm of someone discussing a routine training exercise. A thin sheen of sweat glistened on her forehead, the only indication that she had just been standing in an environment that could melt titanium. "Impossible," she repeated, one eyebrow raised. "I believe that word is no longer in our vocabulary." The holographic feed continued. Private Chen navigated a razor-thin basalt ridge, magnetic grappling systems allowing her to move across superheated rock as if it were a morning jog. Lieutenant Okoi used thermal currents to redirect her team's movement, treating the volcanic environment like a complex dance floor. High Mediator Zora's crystalline form began to vibrate, a sign of extreme emotional response for her species. The thermal dissipation rates, she managed to communicate, they're not just surviving. They're optimizing. Rodriguez tapped a control, bringing up technical schematics of the thermal suits. Each layer was a complex network of nano-adaptive materials, not just protective gear, but a living, breathing extension of human physiology. Blood chemistry, neural pathways, muscle responses, everything dynamically modified in real time. "Training ground," Rodriguez said softly. "We prefer to call it a laboratory of human potential." The diplomatic chamber fell into a stunned silence. The holographic feed continued, showing the human team conducting close-quarters combat training. Lava bubbled around them. Toxic gases swirled, and they moved with a precision that suggested they were more comfortable here than in any conventional battlefield. One soldier, Private Chen, casually removed her helmet. She took a drink from a canteen, wiped sweat from her brow, all while surrounded by liquid rock that bubbled at temperatures exceeding 1,200 degrees Celsius. Ambassador Krelax's communication implant began to overheat. The universal translator crashed, unable to process the implications of what it was witnessing. "We're not here to frighten you," Rodriguez continued, her voice a controlled storm. We're here to establish understanding. This is who we are. This is what humanity represents. The first contact meeting had just become something else entirely. Not a negotiation, not a diplomatic exchange, a declaration of human potential. As the holographic feed faded, the diplomatic chamber remained frozen, a moment suspended between terror and absolute respect. The Confederation's Xenobiology Research Facility was a monument to scientific achievement, a sprawling complex of crystalline laboratories that had unraveled the genetic mysteries of 1,000 different species. But on this day, everything they thought they knew was about to be obliterated. Dr. Elena Rodriguez stood before a holographic dissection of the human thermal suit, her fingers tracing lines of technological complexity that defied comprehension. What the alien researchers saw was not protective gear, but a living system more intricate than any biological organism they had ever encountered. "It's not technology," she said softly, more to herself than to the assembled researchers. "It's a symbiotic organism." The suits were alive in a way that challenged every fundamental understanding of the word. Nano-adaptive materials that weren't just responsive, they were predictive. Each layer was a complex neural network that communicated with the human body at a cellular level, anticipating environmental changes before they occurred. Dr. Krell, the lead Arconian researcher, watched in a state of near-religious terror. His species had mastered genetic engineering millennia ago, but this was something entirely different. The thermal suit wasn't just protecting the human, it was becoming the human. Blood chemistry shifted in real time. Neural pathways reconfigured themselves instantaneously. Muscle responses were dynamically modified at a molecular level. The line between biological entity and technological system had been completely erased. "Look at the cellular regeneration," Dr. Rodriguez pointed out, zooming in on a microscopic view that made the alien researchers collectively gasp. Damaged cells weren't just repaired, they were transformed. Each environmental stress became an opportunity for biological optimization. Private Chen's suit from the volcanic training exercise was now spread across multiple holographic displays. What appeared to be a single piece of equipment was actually a complex ecosystem of adaptive systems. Thermal regulation wasn't about blocking heat, it was about total environmental integration. The magnetic grappling systems, Dr. Rodriguez continued, they're not external attachments. They're biological extensions. Watch how the neural interface works. The holographic display showed microscopic connections between the suit and the human body. Not mechanical connections, living bridges of cellular material that could reconfigure themselves instantaneously. When Chen moved across the basalt ridge during the volcanic training, she wasn't using a tool. She was becoming the tool. Krell's assistant, Nix, began to tremble. Her Vortian physiology was deeply attuned to technological nuance, and what she was witnessing was breaking her understanding of reality. "This is impossible," she whispered. Dr. Rodriguez turned, a slight smile playing on her lips. "Impossible is just a word invented by those who lack imagination." The suit's adaptive capabilities went beyond thermal protection. Toxic gas environments became breathable. Extreme pressure became manageable. Radiation became something to be processed rather than feared. Each environmental challenge was transformed from a threat into a source of potential energy. The researchers pulled up additional files. Training protocols for deep-sea environments, stratospheric combat preparation, missions in chemical weapon zones where conventional protective gear would have failed instantly. But it wasn't just about survival. It was about optimization. The human body, Dr. Rodriguez explained, is not a fixed system. It's a dynamic, adaptable organism that sees limitations as challenges to be overcome. The holographic displays began to smoke, quantum processors overloading as they tried to comprehend the complexity of human adaptive technology. Each attempt to model the thermal suit's capabilities resulted in system crashes. Krell's neural implants pulsed with a warning signal. His brain was literally struggling to process the implications. This wasn't advanced technology. This was a fundamental reimagining of the relationship between biology and environment. As the research team worked through the night, one thing became brutally clear. Humanity had just rewritten the fundamental understanding of what was possible. The symbiosis revelation was complete. Technology and biology were no longer separate. They had become one. The Galactic Confederation's Advanced Warfare Simulation Chamber was a technological marvel, a vast, multi-dimensional environment capable of recreating any conceivable combat scenario with perfect fidelity. Today, it would be utterly destroyed. When the human Special Forces team entered, the chamber's AI began its standard threat assessment protocol. Massive holographic projectors hummed to life, preparing to simulate a volcanic combat environment that would test the limits of any known military unit. They had no idea what was coming. Sergeant Marcus Reyes stood at the center of the simulation, his team arranged in a perfect tactical formation. Lieutenant Aisha Okoye to his right, Private Chen on the left, 3 additional team members filling out the specialized unit. Their thermal suits seemed to breathe nano-adaptive materials already interfacing with the simulation's environmental parameters. Simulation begin. The chamber's AI announced, its quantum processors spinning up to maximum capacity. Mount Kilauea erupted. But this was no ordinary simulation. This was warfare reimagined. A dance of destruction where the environment itself became a weapon, and the humans were its masters. A pyroclastic flow surged forward, a superheated cloud of gas and volcanic debris that would have instantly vaporized any conventional military unit. The human team didn't just survive. They weaponized it. Private Chen's magnetic grappling system found purchase on a rapidly forming basalt ridge. In a movement that defied everything the simulation's AI understood about physics, she used the thermal currents of the eruption to launch herself to a higher tactical position. Her suit's adaptive camouflage shifted, becoming indistinguishable from the molten rock around her. Thermal gradient stabilizing, Chen reported. Optimal combat positioning achieved. Lieutenant Okoye was already redirecting the team's tactical approach. Where other units would seek cover, they were using the volcanic environment as an offensive platform. Lava flows became channeled weapons. Superheated rock fragments were calculated and redirected with mathematical precision. The simulation's threat assessment algorithms began to overheat. Sergeant Reyes moved with a fluidity that suggested the volcanic environment was nothing more than an extension of his own body. A massive lava bubble erupted, a weapon that would have obliterated any conventional military unit. Reyes simply adjusted his suit's magnetic field, using the thermal energy to propel his team's movement. Enemy positioning detected, he called out, utilizing environmental thermal gradients for tactical insertion. The chamber's AI struggled to comprehend what was happening. These weren't soldiers using an environment. These were soldiers becoming the environment. A secondary volcanic vent opened, a catastrophic event that would have meant instant death for any other military unit. The human team simply reconfigured their tactical approach. Chen used the new thermal currents to gain elevation. Okoye redirected the team's communication systems to use the volcanic interference as a form of electronic camouflage. Reyes found a moment of near stillness in the heart of the eruption. Molten rock bubbled around him. Toxic gases swirled. Temperatures exceeded anything that should support life. He stood there, helmet removed, taking a tactical assessment as casually as someone might check the weather. The simulation reached critical complexity. The chamber's quantum processors began to smoke. Holographic projectors flickered and died. The AI's threat assessment systems crashed repeatedly, unable to process a form of warfare that didn't just adapt to the environment, but fundamentally transformed it. As the simulation ended, only silence remained. The human team stood in the center of a destroyed simulation chamber, surrounded by the wreckage of the most advanced military testing facility in the known galaxy. They looked almost bored. Simulation complete, Sergeant Reyes said quietly. Tactical efficiency, 97.6%. The Galactic Confederation would receive a report that would shake the foundations of their understanding of warfare. Somewhere, in the depths of their most secure research facilities, military strategists would begin to understand a terrifying truth. Humanity didn't just fight wars. They'd redefine them. The Galactic Confederation's Supreme Strategic Command Center looked more like a mausoleum of shattered military doctrine than a planning facility. Holographic displays flickered with countless simulations, each one a testament to humanity's complete dismantling of conventional warfare understanding. Fleet Admiral Zixel of the Vortian Stellar Armada stood motionless, his translucent skin cycling through colors that reflected pure, unfiltered terror. The after-action reports from the human volcanic training simulation lay scattered across quantum-linked data surfaces, each page a knife that cut deeper into their understanding of military strategy. "This is not possible," Commander Krell muttered, his sixth finger twitching nervously across a holographic interface. The reports told a story of complete strategic revolution. Humans didn't just adapt to environmental conditions, they weaponized them. The volcanic training was more than a military exercise. It was a complete reimagining of warfare itself. Strategic analyst Prime Nix brought up the comprehensive breakdown. Each data point was a nightmare that challenged everything the Confederation understood about combat capabilities. Environmental adaptation rate, 97.6%. Tactical efficiency in extreme conditions, 99.2%. Physiological stress response, negligible. Technology-biology integration, beyond categorization. The human approach was fundamentally different. Where other species saw limitations, humans saw opportunities. Volcanic environments weren't obstacles, they were tactical playgrounds. Extreme pressure, toxic gases, superheated rock. These were not challenges to be survived, but weapons to be wielded. "Look at their communication systems," Nix pointed out, her voice trembling. The holographic display showed how the human team used volcanic interference as a form of electronic camouflage. Communication channels that would have been completely destroyed in such an environment became a sophisticated method of tactical communication. Fleet Admiral Zixel's neural implants began to pulse with a warning signal. The implications were terrifying beyond comprehension. These weren't just soldiers. They were living weapons systems that could transform any environment into a tactical advantage. Additional files revealed the breadth of human training. Deep-sea combat units operating at crushing pressures, stratospheric warfare teams, units trained to operate in chemical weapon zones, volcanic environment specialists. Each training protocol was a direct challenge to the fundamental understanding of biological limitations. "They don't see environments as challenges," Commander Krell whispered. "They see them as opportunities for optimization." The strategic simulations became a form of psychological warfare. Human units didn't just survive in extreme conditions, they thrived. Thermal suits that were living, breathing extensions of human physiology. Communication systems that used environmental interference as camouflage. Tactical movements that transformed volcanic eruptions into offensive capabilities. Nix pulled up the most disturbing data point, a comprehensive analysis of human training methodologies across multiple extreme environments. The pattern was clear and terrifying. Humanity viewed every environmental challenge as a chance for technological and physiological evolution. This changes everything. Fleet Admiral Zixel finally managed to communicate. His species had conquered 1,000 worlds, developed technologies that reshaped entire star systems. And now, a single species was rewriting the fundamental understanding of warfare. The Strategic Command Center fell into a stunned silence. Holographic displays continued to cycle through human training scenarios. Soldiers moving through environments that would have instantly killed any other known species. Not just surviving, optimizing. Not just adapting, transforming. Commander Krell's final analysis was brutal in its simplicity. Humanity does not see limitations. They see challenges to be overcome. As the strategic meeting concluded, one thing became crystal clear. The galaxy had just encountered a species that didn't just fight wars. They fundamentally reimagined the very concept of conflict. The strategic nightmare was just beginning. The Galactic Confederation's diplomatic nexus became a pressure cooker of existential dread. Communication channels across 1,000 star systems began to buzz with a terror that transcended traditional understanding of conflict. Humanity wasn't just a species, they were a psychological weapon. Ambassador Krelax watched the latest transmission from human training exercises with a sense of mounting horror. The volcanic training footage had become the most analyzed piece of intelligence in galactic history. Every frame was a challenge to everything the Confederation understood about biological and technological limitations. "They're not showing off," Dr. Elena Rodriguez had said during the last diplomatic briefing. "This is who we are." Those words echoed through every diplomatic channel. The psychological impact spread like a quantum virus. Species that had conquered entire star systems, developed technologies beyond human comprehension, now found themselves confronting a fundamental challenge to their understanding of life itself. The Arconian Stellar Collective was the first to completely reorganize their entire military doctrine. Their research teams worked around the quantum clock, analyzing every scrap of human training data. What they discovered terrified them more than any traditional weapon ever could. Humans didn't just adapt to environments. They transformed them. Diplomatic channels became a maelstrom of speculation and fear. How do you negotiate with a species that trains in active volcanoes, that treats environments that would instantly kill most life forms as training grounds, that sees limitations as nothing more than challenges to be overcome? The volcanic training footage became a form of psychological warfare in itself. Soldiers moving through rivers of molten rock. Thermal suits that were living, breathing extensions of human physiology. Communication systems that used environmental interference as a tactical advantage. Ambassador Zara of the Crystal Collectives broke diplomatic protocol during an emergency session. Her crystalline form vibrated with an emotion that transcended language. "They are not a species," she communicated, her neural transmitters pushing against the very limits of translation technology. "They are a force of nature." Intelligence reports began to paint a terrifying picture. Human training wasn't limited to volcanic environments. Deep-sea units operating at crushing pressures, stratospheric combat teams, soldiers trained to operate in chemical weapon zones with a casual efficiency that defied comprehension. Each training protocol was a direct challenge to the fundamental understanding of biological limitations. The psychological warfare wasn't about traditional conflict. It was about potential. About a species that refused to acknowledge the word impossible. Private Chen's casual removal of her helmet during the volcanic training exercise became the most analyzed moment in galactic communication history. Standing in an environment that should have instantly killed her, drinking from a canteen, wiping sweat from her brow. It was more than a demonstration of technological capability. It was a statement. This is who we are. Diplomatic strategies collapsed. Military doctrines crumbled. The very understanding of technological and biological potential was rewritten in the span of a few transmission cycles. The humans weren't threatening anyone. They were simply existing. And that was far more terrifying. Communication intercepts revealed a casual approach that was perhaps the most psychologically devastating element. Soldiers discussing mission parameters as if they were discussing a morning jog. Thermal suits that were living, breathing extensions of human potential. Thermal gradient stabilizing. Private Chen had reported during the volcanic exercise. Suit performance at optimal efficiency. Performance, not survival, not protection. Performance. As emergency diplomatic sessions continued across the galaxy, one thing became brutally clear. Humanity had just introduced a new language to the concept of conflict. Not through aggression, not through traditional warfare, but through the simple, terrifying potential of human adaptation. The psychological warfare was complete, and it had been conducted without firing a single shot. The Confederation's final analysis report was not a document. It was a eulogy for everything they thought they understood about life, technology, and potential. Dr. Krell's hands trembled as he compiled the final assessment. Quantum processors hummed with a quiet desperation, struggling to process the magnitude of what humanity represented. This was more than a species. This was a fundamental force of universal reimagination. The report began with a simple statement that would echo through galactic communication channels for generations. Humanity is not a species to be categorized. Humanity is a process of continuous transformation. Decades of research, thousands of hours of analysis, countless simulation runs, all pointed to a single terrifying conclusion. Humans didn't just adapt to environments. They didn't just survive challenges. They transformed the very concept of limitation. The volcanic training was merely the tip of an incomprehensible iceberg. Classified files revealed training protocols that defied every known understanding of biological and technological potential. Deep-sea units operating at pressures that would crush titanium. Stratospheric combat teams functioning in near-vacuum conditions. Specialized units trained to operate in chemical weapon zones. Soldiers who viewed extreme environments as optimization opportunities. But it was more than technological capability. It was a fundamental philosophy of existence. Where other species saw boundaries, humans saw challenges. Where others sought protection, humans sought transformation. Where others adapted, humans evolved, in real time, on demand. The thermal suits were not protective gear. They were living organisms, a symbiotic extension of human potential that blurred the line between biology and technology. Each environmental challenge became an opportunity for optimization. Each limitation, a chance for growth. Fleet Admiral Zixel's final psychological profile of humanity was brutal in its simplicity. They do not understand the word impossible. The Confederation's most advanced predictive algorithms crashed repeatedly when trying to model human potential. Traditional threat assessment became meaningless. How do you categorize a species that trains in active volcanoes as a standard military protocol? Private Chen's casual removal of her helmet during the volcanic training exercise became the most analyzed moment in galactic communication history. Standing in an environment that should have instantly killed her, drinking from a canteen, wiping sweat from her brow. It was more than a technological demonstration. It was a philosophical statement. This is who we are. The paradigm shift extended beyond military potential. Humanity represented a new understanding of life itself, a species that saw existence as a continuous process of transformation, adaptation, and growth. Technological innovation wasn't something humans did. It was something humans were. The final recommendation from the Confederation's research team was both a warning and a revelation. Recommendation: approach with respect. Engage with curiosity. Never assume limitations. Ambassador Zara of the Crystal Collectives summarized it most succinctly in her final transmission. Humanity is not a species. Humanity is a verb. As the report concluded, one thing became brutally, beautifully clear. The galaxy had just encountered a force of nature that happened to call itself human. They train in active volcanoes. Not because they can, but because they choose to. Classified addendum. Recommended approach. Pray they remain allies.